My name is Charles Inniss. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, and I'm an optimism and mental health coach. As a coach, my goal is to help hardworking professionals to transform their stress, depression, and anxiety into more positive emotions like joy, happiness, and peace of mind. Today I'm going to be talking about motivation, and motivation is everything. It's one thing to know what is good for your health, but it's another thing to be motivated to get there. And so I hope to share some insights that will help people to feel more motivated to make positive change.
Please welcome Charles Inniss.
Thank you.
So
Thank you. Good morning. I am happy to be with y'all. I had a nice drive down from Boston yesterday, and I have to admit I got a little nostalgic when I got to 209 because my sister used to live in East Stroudsburg, and so I had made the trip many times from Boston to East Stroudsburg. This is my first time in Bethlehem, but I'm excited to talk to you about motivation so that we can take all the good information that you've been getting and use it to actually get a positive result. Now, I don't have a compass like Connor, but before we get started, I want to do a quick little energy check. Okay, so I just want you to mentally think, what is my current level of energy? 0, Netflix and pajamas. 10, ready to run the Boston Marathon. So just mentally think, what's my energy level? Everybody got their number? All right, now I'm going to invite you to stand up with me to do a quick little something. Don't worry, and if you just want to look at me, that's fine. All right, let's start off with like 5 little itty-bitty baby squats, just, nice and easy. If you got bad knees, just don't go that far. Trainers always talk to people so that they forget counting. So, all right, I'll let you break. Stand on one leg if you can and just act like you're curling weights. If this feels heavy, you definitely got to do more strength training. All right, this is the sobriety test. Everybody looking good. No one's got to stand on the other leg and push overhead. Yeah, there we go. I'm just counting 5. All right, and then give me a little punch. And then run in place. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and done. Beautiful. Well done. Have a seat. All righty. Yeah. So I want you to mentally check in again. What's your energy level now, 0 to 10? Okay, I see the heads nodding, and so it was to make a point. Sometimes we think about exercise doing something dramatic. Losing 50 pounds, changing my A1C, dramatically changing my blood pressure, that we can forget that sometimes even just a little bit of movement can change how we feel in the moment. All right, I actually started my career working as a physical therapist and personal trainer. And in the early part of my career, I was completely obsessed with anatomy and physiology. I'm an anatomy nerd. I actually dissect cadavers at Boston University. And so anatomy is just my thing. The reason I was so obsessed with anatomy and phys was I thought the more I knew about how the body worked, the better I'd be able to advise my patients and my clients on what they should do to reach better health. But for all the health professionals like me, after working in a clinical setting for a short while, I realized there was a huge difference between personally knowing what someone should do and being able to help them to be motivated enough to follow through with the plan. And so my obsession switched from anatomy and phys to coaching, psychology, and motivation, because knowledge that's not acted upon isn't as useful. Back in 2013, I got hired as the on-site corporate wellness coach for employees at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts. And in that role, I basically sat in an office and talked to tons and tons of employees about their health and wellness goals. And I noticed a pattern. When people came in to talk to me about their health goals, if they were overly down and pessimistic, they never had the energy or the motivation to actually do anything about their goals. So as a coach, I thought that if I wanted to help people to get healthier, I had to help them to develop a mindset that was conducive to motivation and positive change. And one thing I'll say is that optimism is a key ingredient in motivation. Here's how I sometimes think about it. A person without optimism or hope is like a car with a dead battery. You can talk to it, you can yell at it, you can plead with it to start. But if there is no juice, if there is no spark, a person like a car will just stay in park. Now, we think about motivation as a mental thing, and we're going to talk a lot about how our mind influences our motivation to change, but there's going to be some other little things that I'm going to share, and so let's get into it. And Let me see. That one says forward. Oops. It's all good. This is like the test. Actually, that was the right one. All right, perfect. So I have obsessed about motivation for years because it's like, oh, what is it? And if I can add language to describe it, then I think people can navigate better. This is where I think a lot of my clients get stuck. They're like, Charles, I need motivation. Charles, I'm not motivated. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I don't know what it means. Like, how do we? So we need to add language to it. And the first thing I'll say is that the way I think about motivation, I will say that motivation is an emotion, and our emotions change all the time based on our situation. Now, you actually know a lot about motivation already, and to prove it, I want to do a little pop quiz. All right, don't worry, easy pop quiz. All right, so I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to give you two options, and then you're going to think either A or B is the right option. Okay. So first question. Are you more motivated to exercise when you're energetic and well-fed, or A, when you're energetic and well-fed, or when you're B, tired and depleted? All right, everybody got their answer? All right. Second question. Are you more motivated to exercise when you're A, have a lot of free time and a lot of social support, or B, have no free time and no support? All right, last question. Are you more motivated to exercise when you're doing something that you're good at and interested in, or that you're not good at and not interested in? Right? When we break it down like that, it seems kind of easy. And if you said A for all the answers, then you get an A on the pop quiz. And so, again, our motivation changes based on our situation. What we do is impacted by our body, what's happening in our body, energy or no energy, what's happening in our life, free time and support versus no free time and support, and what's happening in our mind, what we're interested and confident in or what we're not interested in, not confident in. And so those are the things that will influence your behavior. I know this is like a little game, but it's all good. We're playing it. We're playing it. So when we think about these situations, what's happening in our body, what's happening in our life, what's happening in our mind, there are three elements that we can consider when we start to try to plan how we might improve our motivation. And those three elements are motivators, strategies, and barriers. If we think about what drives us forward, our body can drive us forward, our life can drive us forward, our mind can drive us forward. If we think about barriers, what can stop us, our body can stop us, our life can stop us, our mind can stop us. One of the mistakes that we tend to make as health professionals when we're trying to recommend someone change is we tend to only make plans that consider the physiology and the body, and we don't take into consideration what's happening in the life or in the mind. And so as a coach, when I'm sitting with someone, that's where I want to go. I want to explore what's happening in your life, what's happening in your mind, and then start to think about the plan that we might make. This is such a simple concept about motivation. If you want to be motivated, you should make a plan that is actually motivating. And it sounds so straightforward, and you're going to see when we start looking, but a lot of times we make a plan, and then we try to figure out how to get motivated for the plan. But if we start by thinking about what's happening in my life, what's happening in my body, what's happening in my mind, and we use that as our foundation to make a plan, the plan will just naturally be more motivating. All right, so I'll talk a little bit about these. And I know that you're probably already thinking, yeah, there's some connections that are popping into my mind. I mentioned that a lot of our behavior is driven by our body. When you're tired, you sleep. When you're hungry, you eat. When you're thirsty, you drink. And so that's, again, a source of just going to be our body. If we think about our life, imagine that I went to your office, if you work in an office, and at the end of the day, I said, oh my goodness, you have unbelievable motivation. I cannot believe you just sat in the desk for 8 straight hours. You would look at me and be like, that wasn't really motivation. By the same token, if I went to someone at a grocery store at the end of the day and said, wow, I can't believe you have such unbelievable willpower. You stood for 8 straight hours. They would say, call security, get this guy up out of here. And so a lot of our behavior is actually going to just be dictated by the structure and the nature of our lives. And so, again, everybody's life is different. There have been times where I've coached someone like a post office worker, And so like getting steps in isn't usually like a problem for someone who's delivering mail because that's just the nature of their lives, which would be a very different situation for a truck driver or someone else. And so again, we have to think about the nature of our lives when we think about our plans. Okay. What else do I want to say about this? Let me just check real quick. Okay. I think I'm good. In addition to think about what drives us, I think that sometimes the barriers, and you kind of thought about this already in the pop quiz, if we think about physical barriers that will stop us from doing something, pain and energy are probably the two things from a physical perspective that will limit our motivation to change. So sometimes we might need a strategy to help us to relieve pain or get more energy. If we think about life, generally speaking, it's time and resources, time, money, support. So if that's a barrier that's stopping us from making a change, then our plan has to address trying to get some more support or free time. And then if we think about confidence or knowledge or interest as a barrier, then by the same thing, we should take that into account as we start to make our plan. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the mind because I know that that's where motivation kind of lies for a lot of us. And there's a scale on the board. And I'm going to tell a story. I don't know if you can relate to it, but maybe you might know someone that this has been their experience. New Year's comes around, and the person says to themselves, this is the year. I'm losing 25 pounds. So what happens? They're all jazzed up. They're motivated. They're going to lose 25 pounds. They start going to the gym. They change their nutrition. First week goes by, lose 2 pounds. Yeah, I knew it. This is my year. Second week, still motivated, going to the gym. Lose another 2 pounds. Yeah, I know it. Third week, another 2 pounds, and you're like, oh, this is it. This is my year. Fourth week, you lose 1 pound, and you're like, what's going on here? But you're still motivated. You're in it. Fifth week, you don't lose any weight, and you're like, uh-oh, what am I doing wrong? Sixth week, God forbid, you gain a half a pound. What the hell? I'm doing all this work. I gave up all my favorite foods. I'm pushing myself at the gym, and it's not helping me to get to my goal. Why bother? And we quit. I think a lot of people could resonate with that story. Yeah. It is interesting, and that takes me to the next point. I want to talk about extrinsic motivation versus intrinsic motivation. Now, when we use something externally to give us feedback, it tends to tap into our extrinsic motivation. And extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation are two different things. I think most people have probably heard those two terms before. One of the challenges to extrinsic motivation is that it creates a conditional relationship to the behavior, meaning we will do the behavior if our conditions are being met. And so with the scale, it's like, well, I'm going to exercise if my conditions are being met. And so the minute the conditions aren't being met, we walk out the door. Interestingly, I read an article from Dr. Ruth, this was actually a while ago, and she was talking about why the divorce rate is so much higher now than in older times. And I know there's a lot of extra reasons, but what she said is she was like, it's the expectation of the partners. The partners have so many expectations. My person has to do this, and this, or I'm leaving. And sometimes with exercise, we're like, okay, exercise has to do this, or I'm leaving. And so, again, I know that it's common that we think about external measurements, but when we look at some type of external feedback, it will tend to make us think about it in a more conditional way. The opposite would be intrinsic feedback. When we are doing something that is inherently interesting, fun, rewardable, and feels good to us, then it's more of an unconditional relationship to the behavior. If it feels good for my knees when I go walking, and it feels good for my knees, I win. Like, I don't have to go for a walk and have it do all these other things. I just have to do it because I like it. If I like going for a walk with my friend, and that's just what I like doing, I can just go for a walk with my friend and not need it to do all these other things. So what I'd say is that if we think about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, they both work for different reasons. When we're tapping into extrinsic motivation, we tend to value the outcome above the behavior. When we're tapping into intrinsic motivation, we value the behavior above the outcome. Okay, and so that's the big difference. And so if we want people to actually change their behavior, we want to get to a place where they value the behavior above the outcome. Now, again, I know that in healthcare, we think about metrics all the time, weight, A1C, blood pressure, and any other biometric data point. And I'm not saying that there's no value in that, but anytime we are putting the most value on the outcome, we're going to be tapping into extrinsic motivation, and it may not be the best thing that supports lasting behavior change. All right, now, in society, and not just in healthcare, we tend to try to motivate people by rewards and punishments, carrots and sticks. And if we didn't get paid at work, that's a condition. I'm going to come to work if you pay me. Then if you don't pay me, I'm not coming. So again, a lot of our society is run on punishments and rewards. So I'm not saying that external numbers and punishments and rewards don't work, but sometimes they don't work in a way that we think they will work. So here's an interesting note about both punishments and rewards. They took a bunch of kids who loved art, and they watched them for a couple weeks, in the after-school program, and they were just drawing paintings. And I don't remember the exact number, but let's say the average kid drew like 5 paintings in the time that they were just drawing art. The researchers went in and said, okay, you know what? We want to incentivize the kids to draw. So let's tell them that we'll give them $1 for every painting that they complete. Thinking that, if we can motivate them, the kids drew less. Why did they draw less? Because initially they were doing it for this intrinsic meaning. I love this. This is fun. This is enjoyable. You pay me, now it's a job. Now it's an obligation. So they may still enjoy it, but when we make it more focused on an outcome, we take away some of that intrinsic feeling. And so we may do it, but we just don't do it with the same heart and the same vigor as when we're doing it for something that's internally important to us. All right, so another study that was interesting, behavioral economics, there was a daycare, and at the daycare, one of the common challenges was parents were coming late to pick up their kids. And so they said, how do we stop the parents from coming late? We got things to do too. So they said, we got it. We'll find the parents. That'll get them to come on time. And when they started finding the parents for coming late, more parents showed up late. It's like, wait, how? Well, because now, before, intrinsically, I want to get there on time because I want to be a good citizen. Just this is something that's valuable to me. But if you let me pay for being late, then I don't need to show up on time because I can just pay for my mistake. And so again, we shift, when we think about rewards and punishment, we shift it more externally, and the person doesn't feel as connected to the behavior as when we're tapping into intrinsic. So again, they both work, and sometimes if you have a behavior that you're just never going to love, you might have to put a reward on it. But if that's the only way we try to get people to move is by punishing them or rewarding them or getting them to focus on external things, sometimes it doesn't support their behavior long term. And so if we think about what we can potentially do, 2 thoughts. We can try to tap more into internal feedback than external feedback. So by internal, I mean how we feel physically and mentally. And if we can tap into that, that will shift our experience and make us go more to intrinsic motivation. So again, I know when I go out for a walk in the morning, I'm going out for a walk in the morning because I love the sun. I love the way my back feels. It fits with my values of being a health person. It fits with some of my long-term goals. So it's just something that just feels like it's part of my identity, part of who I am, and I just love doing it. Sure, my blood pressure might be getting better. Sure, it might be helping me sleep more. Sure, it might be decreasing my inflammation. Sure, it might be doing a bunch of other things. But I'm doing it because it feels good and I love it, and it matched up with my values. And so the more you can start to try to tap into your internal values and make plans that align with that, the more you'll find that you'll do a behavior. And I'll say this, if you love numbers, because I think sometimes that's the thing about the external things that helps. Numbers are motivating, because when you see a number going in the direction that you want, that feels good. If you want to use numbers, I think that you can use them thinking about behavioral milestones, because then that's still at least focusing on the behavior. As an example, I know the Fitbits came up a little bit. And so if you say, my vision for myself is I want to try to get 8,000 steps a day, 7,000 steps a day, we're putting value on the behavior. Sure, that may be in service of some external number, but if the value is on the behavior, then that can still be something that taps into helping me to pursue that behavior. All right. I know I said a lot of stuff real quick. All right, cool? All right, cool. All right. There are many motivational theories, and so I want to talk a little bit about self-determination theory. Self-determination theory says that there's a spectrum of motivation. On one end is no motivation, and on the other end is the highest quality of motivation, intrinsic autonomous motivation. And of course, somewhere in the middle, a bunch of little different spectrums. There are three elements that tend to contribute to the highest quality of motivation, and they are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Autonomy is one of your greatest psychological needs. Everyone wants to feel free. And interestingly, when we tell people what to do, it threatens their autonomy and they don't feel free. And so even if we say the exact perfect thing, by removing their autonomy, they will tend to rebel against us and be like, no, I want to be free. Here's a fascinating study about autonomy and behavior change. A bunch of teenagers were brought into a room, and they were asked to rank their favorite video games, 1 being their favorite, 10 being their least favorite. After the teenagers ranked their favorite video games, an adult went into the room and said, ooh, you should play whatever their first choice was. More than 50% of the teenagers chose to not play their first choice, because that's how important autonomy is. A second ago, this is my absolute favorite. Hey, you should play it. I'll play something else. So I know it's so crazy the way our mind works, but once you know, then you'll be able to help other people. As a coach, I try to be autonomy supportive, and so if I'm trying to help someone to change, I want to support their autonomy to choose how they want to change. Fascinating when we think about coaching, one of the things we do is reflections. So someone says something and we reflect, we ask a question, we reflect. And often with that style of communication, we can get someone to say exactly the same thing that we were going to say, but when they say it, it's like, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. It's so crazy. It's so crazy how that happens. So as an example, someone might come to me and they say they want to work out more, and I listen to their challenges, and I might say something like, tell me about a time when you were in a really good groove, really good rhythm. Oh, Charles, I was in a really good rhythm when my girlfriend and I were going to the gym, and then we would walk, and so I might reflect and say, oh, it sounds like you thrive when you're in community, and that it's easier for you to be physically active when you're leaning on social support. Yeah, that's my jam. And all of a sudden, the person starts thinking, oh, well, shoot, maybe that should be part of my plan. So I gotta say, you know what, if you wanna get motivated, you need to socially connect. And that may be right, but if I can ask them about what they experienced when they were doing well, and I can point it out to them, and they can say, yeah, when I was doing well, this is what I was doing, it's just so different how it might impact them. And I'll say this about motivation to exercise. We know connection is a powerful motivator. It's mentioned as one of the parts of self-determination theory. So many people feel they have to solve the motivation to exercise question on their own. I can't tell you how many people come to me, Charles, I used to go to the gym, but now I've got kids, and now I'm trying to figure out how to go into the basement and get on a treadmill and stare at the wall for an hour. Help me get motivated. And I'm like, oh, so you want me to help you to get motivated to watch paint dry? Oh, yeah. We can do it. Let's go. But I understand why we think sometimes when we think about discipline, we may have a prejudice in our mind about this is the way I have to do it. But if that way is not working, the connection way might be a different way. Well, autonomy, again, is an important element, and we should support people's autonomy. Oops. Another no-brainer statement about motivation. If you don't think you can do something, you won't even try. And so competence and mastery is an important element to helping us grow. Now, even if we're not good at something, if we believe we can get good at it, it's going to support us in growing. And actually, I think for a lot of people, confidence and competence is one of the biggest mental barriers for them. Someone has tried to lose weight, tried to lose weight, tried to lose weight, tried to change their habits, failed. They sit in front of a health professional. They're probably not thinking they're competent at this. They're probably not thinking they can master it. And so back to that idea of hope, we might have to help people to tap into a sense of hope. One way that we might do that is to, like I mentioned earlier, think about our past successes. Anytime we think about times when we've been successful, it can reveal something about us that hopefully gives us some belief that we can do it again. And asking people about their strengths and their resources and what they can lean on for support is another thing that we can do that helps people to feel more confident. So someone's sitting in front of me and they're thinking in their mind, I got to solve this problem on my own. And I might say, okay, I'm curious. Who in your world can you lean on for support to reach this goal? And the minute they start thinking about, oh, well, I have this person, I have that person, or I have this access to this, or I have this technology, then that serves to give them a little bit more confidence that they can do it. So again, if we think about the strongest quality motivation, we need to be free to choose. We need to feel that we're competent or that we can at least grow in the area, and there also has to be some connection. I'm sure you've had this experience. Maybe not. One of my favorite cardio machines is an arc trainer, like a type of elliptical. And one summer, I remember I went to the gym. It was in the middle of the day, just had some free time, and I'm thinking, I'm going to go on my favorite machine. So I get on the machine, and like a lot of people, when I got to the gym, I realized I forgot my headphones. And so I was sitting there, I'm like, well, we're just going to see how this goes. And so I had a magazine, I'm flipping on, then I'm looking around, and then I'm like, okay, I don't know if I can keep going. I take the magazine off the timer, I'm like, 2 minutes. I'm like, that's it. And I actually looked at the person at the gym, I'm like, you know what? I'm going home. And I literally left. I got on my favorite machine, I left after 2 minutes. Now, there was a time where me and my buddy went biking along the Charles River in Boston, comes over to my house, we bike down to the Hat Shell, we bike back, and we get back, and I'm like, wait, you want to go another little loop or something? Like, we had been out for an hour and a half, and we were trying to find more loops because it was just, we didn't want it to end. And so when I was with my buddy again, it's just easy for me to just kind of keep going. When I was doing something that was engaging, it was just easy to keep going. And I'm guessing that this has happened to everybody, where you're taking a walk with your friend, you're like, oh, we got to turn back. Because again, when it's engaging and it's connected to other people, it's just easier. And I see a lot of heads nodding. Cool. All right. So without getting too crazy, one thing that we can do if we're trying to be more motivated to change is we can use self-determination theory to make a more motivating plan. We have to think about what's valuable and important to us and freely choose how we want to take care of ourselves. We want to pick something where we feel confident, or at least try to develop the mindset that we can grow in that area, and if we need support, then we can do that. And then as much as we can, we want to make sure that it's related to our values and connected to other people. Cool. All right. Now, this is something that I kind of made up after talking to a lot of people. It takes a lot of theories, and I wasn't sure if I was going to have time to do this, but I'll give a chance to talk to you about it. And it is what I think are 7 elements of a motivating plan. I mentioned this earlier. A lot of times we mess up because we make a plan, and then we try to figure out, how do I get motivated to do this thing? And what I would say when I'm working with clients is say, okay, let's figure out how to make a motivating plan, and then we don't have to try to figure out how to get motivated to do it. So the 7 elements of a motivating plan, I call them PCC, which stands for purpose, engagement, accountability, which I really want to call support, enjoyment, convenience, and then the last IC is importance and confidence. So here's a thought. When I was working as a corporate coach at Blue Cross, we gave every employee Fitbits, and we had a wellness program. And we sometimes had Fitbit challenges. And when you successfully completed a Fitbit challenge, you got points, and the points that you earned could help you to get money. And so springtime rolls around, and I just saw everybody walking. I'm like, what the heck? It's like an exodus of the building at lunchtime. Everyone just goes out and walks. Why? Because maybe there was a strong purpose there. It's like, ooh, if I complete this challenge, I also get some rewards. And maybe people had some internal things too, that they like to walk or want to get in shape or whatever it might be. But when there's a strong purpose, people will tend to be more motivated to doing something. Then if we think about engagement, I mentioned this already about connectedness. If it's boring, we're not gonna do it, but if we can make it more engaging, then that'll increase our desire to do it. I say accountability. I don't like the word accountability. Well, I shouldn't say I don't like the word accountability. Often the way people interpret the word accountability is extrinsic in nature. I need you to hold me accountable. One of my buddies came to me a couple weeks ago with his business goals. He's like, oh, Charles, here are my business goals. I need you to hold me accountable. I'm like, no, I'm not going to hold you accountable. I'm like, you got to hold yourself accountable. I'm like, I'll support you, but I'm not going to be calling you being like, did you do it? I'm like, that's you. That's your life. Now, I know that this is interesting because, again, most of the time when we're trying to help people, we think that we have to be the one to get them to change. And then the coaching mindset is more, I want to support their autonomy. And so instead of it being my job, it's your job. You're empowered. You're the captain. You're the hero. And so, so I put accountability up there because, again, most people do recognize that when they have some accountability and or support, it's easier to do a behavior. Convenience, the easier it is to get started, the more likely you'll do it. In psychology, they call it activation energy. And so if you ever heard anyone say, put your shoes by the door or plan to do something that just makes it easier. One of the guys that I heard talk about this, Sean Acar, he wanted to play the guitar more. And his guitar was in the hall, like right in front closet, not too far from the living room. And after the first month of his goal of playing the guitar, he had played the guitar twice. And so he said, maybe I should use all this psychology research to change. So he put the guitar stand next to the sofa. He played every day. It was only, 15 feet, but out of sight, out of mind, easier to get started. And so the more convenient and practical any behavior is to start, the more likely you'll be to follow through with it. And then enjoyment and importance. The more enjoyable it is, the more important it is, the more confident you are. And I'll stop there. Cool. So what I'll say is that this just gives you language because you can identify, oh, my purpose went down. Oh, my enjoyment went down. Oh, my support went down. So how do I get more motivated? I got to add enjoyment. I got to add support. So those are all the things that you can add to a plan to make it more motivating. And I'll say this, you don't have to add everything. Sometimes just one strong purpose is enough. I'm thinking about a client. She's like, Charles, I'm a chicken fingers and fries kind of gal. I don't do salads. I'm like, no judgment. I'm like, however you want to take care of yourself is your business. I'm just here to support you. And then one day I see her at the salad bar. And I'm like, what's going on? You're over at the salad bar. She's like, I got engaged. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. So the purpose changed, and so her motivation changed. Now, I know that sometimes we give you lots of different thoughts, and it can be overwhelming. And I know I've already said a lot of different things. Simplicity really is a superpower for motivation because complexity is just so hard to execute. And so the more complex anything is, the harder it is to actually do. And so when you're trying to change, I generally say just think about one thing to change because trying to get better at sleep and nutrition and movement and stress and all these things all at once, it's just going to be so complicated. If you're retired and won the lottery and you can do it, go for it. But most people only have the bandwidth for one. Okay. I want to finish talking a little bit more about how do we create a motivating mindset. So I've said the plan has to be motivating. But of course, motivation can come from our mind. And a motivating mindset is going to be positive and optimistic. We're going to be focusing on pros, benefits, and all the good stuff. Now, if you think about your thinking, and I had to pick a word to describe the anatomy of your thinking, I would choose mindset. And I would say that your mindset is a product of your focus and your story. What you focus on affects how you feel, and the story you tell yourself about what you focus on affects how you feel. How you feel and think, of course, influences how you are and what you do. From a behavior perspective, all behavior is motivated by one of two forces, approach or avoid. We approach what we desire, we avoid what we fear. And negativity and pessimism is the underlying mindset of avoid. Stay back, don't trust, don't try, don't risk. And the strength of negativity is that it serves to protect us and keep us safe. But if we want to thrive and move forward, we need to tap into the optimism that's necessary to give us hope, courage, and faith to keep going. And so a more optimistic mindset is going to be one that is going to be more conducive to helping us to grow. Now, questions will direct your focus. And so a negative question will tend to direct your focus in the negative area, and you will tend to avoid making the change. Whereas a positive question will tend to direct your focus in a positive area and make it more likely that you make the change. I don't know if you've gone to see a doctor or a coach or a medical professional, and you started down, you sat with them, and here's how the conversation goes. Charles, you know, I really want to lose 50 pounds and get in shape, but I had knee surgery, I got a bad back, I kind of got carpal tunnel, I work a really stressful job, I have a long commute, I'm taking care of my kids, I got my mom, I got stuff at the church, but can you help me? And I'm like, oh yeah, first we got to get you away from all those other crazy negative things. So no judgment, but what happens is if we stack barrier, obstacle, challenge, limitation, and then we say, I got to do something great, all the focus on the barriers, challenges, obstacles will tend to make us avoid making the change. But if we ask some different questions, then we might be more likely to start thinking about making the change. Asking about your hopes and your dreams, your vision and your values, your strengths and your abilities, your resources, and I want to do a little quick thing with you. And I went fast because I know I only got 5 minutes, but it's all good. All right. So I want you to, I'm going to go over these questions, but we're going to do a little coaching, group coaching here. I want you to think about some change that you're considering making, some health lifestyle change you're considering making. From any of the pillars, it could be diet, could be nutrition, could be sleep, could be stress. All right? Now, I want you to just imagine, how do you hope your life will be positively impacted if you were to be successful in making that change? Okay. Then think, what makes that meaningful and important to you? Thinking back to a best experience, think about a time when you accomplished something with effort and determination. It could be that you got a second degree, could be that you raised a family, could be that you ran a marathon, just anything that you did in your life that you accomplished with effort and achievement. As you reflect on that, you can use it as evidence that you have the capability to do great things. And connected to that, I'm wondering, what strengths did you use to accomplish that thing? Those strengths are still inside you, and so potentially could you use those strengths to try to accomplish this new change? In addition to your strengths, what other resources can you lean on? What people, places, things, or technologies can you lean on for support? And then lastly, I want you to just imagine that you're successful in making the change. How do you feel? Cool. I know I went really quickly there, but if you're trying to get more motivated to change, you can just simply start asking yourself more positive questions. And any one of those questions by themselves could just be a thing. Even if it's just, how do I hope this will positively impact me? So you start thinking about the benefits. It can make a huge difference in your motivation to change. All right, and I'm going to pause there for questions.